Draymond, have you, over the course of this season, had time to like just realize that you, Steph, Clay, Andre, Loon may not be together next year?
Nah.
And just think about what it means to do what you're trying to do this year.
I mean, every year you think about what you're trying to do. I haven't thought about it from a perspective of like we wouldn't be together next year. I mean, unless Andre retires.
You don't know, but I mean, it's uncertain. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unless Andre retires, yeah, it's looking pretty solid.
But just the meaning of having you guys trying to make this run after Andre was gone for a while and not knowing where Looney's health was going to be, how much does it mean to be able to get to this point with the five of you still doing what you're doing?
It means a lot, you know, to kind of put it all back together. You know, that's kind of always been the thought, you know, like we'll keep plugging away. We'll keep developing our young guys, trying to win, but ultimately understanding that, you know, we need to be healthy. And when we get back healthy, if we develop our young guys the right way, then they'll be able to help. And that's kind of what's happened. So I think that was the plan all along. And, you know, to see it coming to fruition it's a great thing. Love it when the plan come together.
Draymond, yesterday, Steve said that he sees Marcus Smart as like the guard version of you. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, for sure. He's the emotional leader. He's the anchor on their defense. In a way, you know, Robert Williams is the anchor in a way. Al Horford is actually an anchor in a way, but Marcus Smart is like your real anchor on that defense. And then on the offensive end, you know, he's the one getting everybody involved. He's the one calling the sets. And so I definitely see some of that. But, you know, that's a guy who I have a lot of respect for. And, you know, to see him, you know, coming into his own, and I've used this a couple of times, to see him once again looking like the Marcus Smart that came out of Oklahoma State and, you know, that has so much promise. To see him back playing that way and at that level is, it's been fun to watch.
You said Marcus Smart got Defensive Player of the Year. You said that was an honor that you were hoping to get this season. And in fairness, you missed 2 months with your back injury. You landed on the second team for all defense. But when you think about your goals and your play this season, was landing on that second team, from your perspective, a compliment or a slight?
For me, it's a slight. I think when I look at the first team, I'm not sure I can pinpoint. Definitely not five guys that had a better defensive season than me. And there are no game requirements. There's not some amount that you have to play in order to win. If there was an amount that you had to play in order to win, then I'd be an idiot sitting here saying that. But there's no amount that you had to play to win. There's just kind of this thought from people that, you played this amount of games. But what you had to see, I think it'd be hard for someone to come and show me better. And especially not five guys. So it's more of a slight to me than anything. I'm saying that, it goes on the resume as an all-defensive team, so I'll take it. But I was a little shocked when Ernie was reading in my ear. He read the first team, and I'm like, that's interesting. But maybe I didn't make it at all. But then the fact that you say I made a second team, there weren't five defenders. So, again, you had to totally take me off. And then I'd be like, all right, like, they voted on the amount of games. But it makes absolutely no sense to say, well, he was a second team all-defensive player. Because then you can't be taking the amount of games into consideration. And if you are taking the amount of games into consideration and saying, oh, this guy is second team, then you're just making stuff up. Because now it's like, well, if he played this amount of games, I have him first team, but a second team, and that's not anywhere in the requirements. So I think it was more of a slight. But 7 out of 10 years on the all-defensive team, it ain't so bad. So I feel I'm a little messed up on it. But,
Hey, Draymond, when thinking about the threats that Boston has on the perimeter, how does a healthy Gary Payton kind of change the series?
well, it's adding another really, 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 really good defender for us. And, you know, another body that we can throw at, mainly JT and Jaylen Brown. You know, guys like that, you can't give them the same look over and over again. So just having bodies, if a guy gets in foul trouble or, you know, whatever may happen, having another guy that you can throw at, you know, a couple of those guys, I think it makes a huge difference. And Gary's been a huge part of what we've done all year. So, I mean, just having his presence back, having what he brings to this team, you know, if we're lucky to have him back, which I'm not sure if he's back for game one or not, you may know better than me. But if he is back, I mean, I think that's a huge boost for us.
Hey, Draymond. Oh.
And one more question, Dre. When you think about the concept of paying your dues.
Where are you from?
Me, DC. Oh, what's up?
It just almost came out like.
Now, when you think about the concept of paying your dues in this league, and a guy like Jordan Poole, do you think his progression and, you know, the way he's paid his dues, has he kind of followed the right path in terms of doing that?
I don't think there's a right path. I think everyone's path is different. Luka never paid any dues, really. But does that mean he don't deserve to be Luka? Like, and be all NBA first team, whatever he's been 3 years in a row, 3 out of 4 years or something? He didn't pay dues. But he's that great. So I don't think there is a right process. What Ja just finished? His second year or third year? Third year? Ja was incredible last year. You know, so I don't necessarily look at it as like there's some specific path you have to take. Victor Oladipo became an all-star like year 6 or something. Like, and so I think for everyone, that path is different. My path was totally different than Clay's. My path was totally different than Steph. So I think everyone's path is different. You have to embrace your path for what it's worth. And that's what Jordan has done. What was he, 28th pick or something like that? 28th pick. Didn't play much. Played in the G League bubble, you know, all of those things, and has continued to work. And you know, that's not just some path that some guy is going to take. That's a path that was created by a guy who put an enormous amount of work in. And so I think every guy's path is different. And if you're sitting around wondering why your path looks different than the next guy, you already lost your battle with your path, because his path ain't yours and yours isn't his. And that's just kind of the nature of what we do.
Hey, Draymond, I don't know if you've seen, there's some pictures going around of the way you guys looked in 2015, and you looked really young, the three of you.
My hands was ashy as hell in that picture. It was cold in Chicago, morning before the flight. I had Harold's that after that practice, though. It was great. But yeah, my hands were a disaster in that picture. I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering how different this journey feels from when you were so young. I mean, you've got your little guy behind the podium, you know, at the beginning it was Riley behind there. Just doing this as a grown man with a little gray in the beard and a different perspective. How does that change the journey?
It changes it a lot, because you're just at a different stage in the journey. You know, we went from being toddlers in the journey, and, you know, I think the thing that people forget when we won our first championship is we were young. I was in my 3rd year. Clay was in his 4th year. Steph was in his 6th year. But we were so important to that team that you tend to forget that now we had super vets guiding us, showing us the way. We have Andrew Bogut, David Lee, Leandro Barbosa. You know, we had Matt Barnes, we had Zaza, we had David West. You know, we've had along this journey, veterans that was showing us the way. The difference in the journey now is we're now the veterans showing the way. And yes, still equally as important to the squad, but we're now the veterans with more responsibility of showing these guys the way and figuring out how do you get to Jordan Poole, right? How do you get to Kuminga? Before, it was them figuring us out. Now for us, it's figuring them out. It's what buttons do you push? What buttons do you not push? What's too much teaching? What's not enough? The worries that we never had before, we now have. And I think that is the difference in the journey. Now, in saying that, you get it's very fulfilling to see young guys like Jordan and Moses and even Loon, who's still fairly young. JK, you have an appreciation for seeing those guys rise to the occasion, for seeing how they're prepared for the moment. And, you like to feel like you have something to do with it, and just every day that you're putting in with these guys and the countless amount of hours and teaching, and you get a sense of gratitude from it. And so the journey, the work put in is the same or more, but it's the road, it's all the nuances, it's the little things that you just have a totally different appreciation for, being in a different position and along this journey as opposed to when we were at first.
You were talking on your podcast today about, kind of your initial skepticism of how the roster was built preseason, and coming to be like, all right, front office did do a good job. Can you just kind of maybe detail your early skepticism and coming to realize that you did kind of like how the roster was built?
I always thought from the very beginning, like if you looked at the roster, we had pieces that could work. What I was afraid of in the very beginning was the lack of experience, because it just wasn't much experience. And even like the guys who came on that do have experience, game experience, it wasn't much playoff experience. So if you look across the board, Steph have experience, Clay has experience, Andre, Loon, myself. Kinda. Kinda. Not conference finals, not NBA finals. That's a totally different experience. And so when you look across that of guys who have real experience, it's 5 out of 17 guys. It's not that many. And as opposed to, I've been on a team throughout this run where maybe 12 out of 15 guys had a bunch of experience. And so I think for me earlier in the year, it was just like, we don't have much experience. So you always feel like, yeah, you have to go through those lumps, right? Like you have to get through that and get these guys experience. And how fast does that happen? Like, that's the thing that you can't predict. You can't predict how fast guys are going to pick it up, how fast guys are going to adjust to physicality, how fast, blah, 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 whatever. You just can't predict some of those things. And so I think the biggest thing for me was just the lack of experience. And then obviously Clay was out for the first 40 games. And so that even shrinks that number even more. So that was the big deal for me. When you look around at how championship teams has historically been built, unless it's just a super young team like the Warriors early on, which had veterans around us, then you just haven't really seen it before. I saw the Detroit Pistons try to do it back when I was like in high school, and it just did not go well, and you can like go down the list. Once the Lakers lost Shaq, they were a disaster. Kobe was still there, but they were a disaster, and so when you're trying to do that, historically, we just hadn't seen it work. And so that was my skepticism of like, man, we don't have much experience. How do you get guys experience in doing it? And the only way to get guys experience is to actually make it and play and actually going through it. So that was more of my skepticism, more so than the talent itself, was just the lack of experience.
Draymond, you predicted before the Eastern Conference Finals ended that Boston would come out.
I didn't really predict that. I think I just know a little bit about basketball. And I mean, if you know a little bit about basketball and you saw the two teams, I just thought Boston was the better team. Like, it wasn't a prediction or a slight at anybody. I thought they were a better team, and clearly I wasn't far off.
Right, that was determined that they were coming out the other side. So what is it that you saw them doing or how they were playing then that sort of made you think that way?
I think it's, you know, we've been watching it for months now, where their defense is absolutely incredible. They have a good offense, and more importantly on offense, they have a guy that is one of them guys. You know, Jaylen Brown is absolutely, you know, a very good player, but Jason Tatum is one of them guys. And when you have that, you always have a chance of winning. When you have a guy like that, you couple that with all the pieces around him, the defense around him. They have veteran leadership. You know, you couple that with all the things that's around, and you look and you say, wow, they actually have what it takes. And so for me, that was just my thought. And then, you know, in going into that series, you know, Miami was hobbled. And I just didn't feel like they would be able to score enough points to beat them, especially with Tyler Hero being out. Tyler Hero was their second leading scorer in the season, if I'm not mistaken. And so with him being out, I just didn't think they would be able to manufacture enough buckets in order to win the game. And it's kind of what it came down to. I mean, they lost 100 to 96, like 100 points and a bunch of points. It's kind of what it came down to. Couldn't score enough points. So that was my thoughts on that game. It's just like, I don't think they're going to be able to score enough to beat them.
Two more on this side going down memory lane. How much better are you a defender today than you were then?
Oh man, I think it's night and day. Like, I think I'm like the top of my powers on the defensive end. I feel like I can see everything coming, and you know, I understand more personnel now. I understand what teams trying to get to now, tendencies. I just think I have a totally different understanding and appreciation for the defensive end. Like, earlier in my career, I played defense because I had to. Like, I had to play to be on the court. I play defense now because I absolutely love it. Like, I get joy out of playing defense. And so it's kind of different space in the journey along the way. But nonetheless, I feel like I'm at the top of my powers. I don't think that's the peak of my powers. I think I'm still getting better. But I definitely think I'm at the top of my powers defensively for sure.
Draymond, as one of the vets trying to show Kuminga and Moody the way, what is your hope and goal for them to gain out of this finals? Even if they don't play, what's your vision for them like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that how this finals run might impact them? Or what you hope they get out of it?
Number one is a championship ring, because I think that right there alone gives you a certain calmness, a certain peace with your career, because you check that box immediately. You know, most people spend their career chasing that and worry like, man, I need to get to this team. I need to get to that team. I need to be around these guys, or, you know, whatever the case may be. We need that coach. Like, most people spend their career, if you're not a loser, which we have a bunch of coming through this league. No, I'm serious. But if you're not a loser, then you worry about that your entire career. And so I think initially is, number one, is just for them to not have that worry moving forward. Like, you already have that stamp of I'm a champion. Now, everything you do from there, you can do it from a different space. You know, you're not chasing anything or really wanting for that particular thing, which some people never get. And so I think it's that. I also think the experience of playing at this level and understanding, like, man, whether they, like you said, whether they play or not. You're in it, and to see or feel how, like, and understand the level that this game has to be played at in order to compete at this level, which is the absolute highest level of basketball you can play at. And then they'll go to summer league, and you'll see, and to say, wow, I was just in this, and this is what I just saw. And now I'm watching this basketball, I'm playing this basketball. It should give you a totally different perspective on the game. And that's my hope for them, is that it just gives them a perspective of what it takes to really compete and win at the absolute highest level that you can. Because if you can have that perspective from year one, it sets you up very nicely for the rest of your career. And that's my hope for them, is that they're just able to gain that perspective and understanding of how hard it is and how hard you have to work in order to be great in this league, which I feel like both of those young guys can. But there's a lot of work that goes into that, and you need to see that level to understand that level and where you need to get.
All right, one on Zoom real quick. Ron Kreutzig, go ahead.
Draymond, I was wondering if you could offer an example of sort of, the word culture gets thrown around a lot, and the Warriors culture that Steve has created here. Any example of how that culture helped you guys get through all the losing of 2 years ago and get back here as quickly as you have?
I think ultimately just keeping the main thing, which is winning. No matter what, when we were getting crushed 2 years ago, won 15 games, the mindset every day coming in was, how can we win? It was never like, oh, well, let's go out here and see if, we're capable of doing this. It wasn't always like, no, speaking from a position of, this is how you win. Doing things from a place of, this is how you win. And never really giving into the losing ways that we see around this league often, and just like, oh, we lost and that's it, and we suck and whatever, on to the next one. Like, we never felt that way. Like, we were 15 and 50. 15 and 50. I felt all of those losses. Like, all of them losses bothered me. It was never like, oh, we suck and we just move on and we're going to lose the next one. That was never our mindset. It was always, how can we get better to get back here? That's not the way you do that. If you do that way, you're going to lose. Now, mind you, we had won 12 games and lost 45. But you do that way, we're going to lose. And we've always spoken, tried to do things from that perspective and understanding what it takes to win, and not just falling into the habits that you can build when losing the way we were.
Great.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Draymond. Appreciate that.